2 times undisputed at lightweight and light welter. Resume: Vivian Obanov, Jessica McCaskill, Delphine Passoon, 2 fights. Christina Linatadu, Natasha Jonas, Miriam Gutierrez. A loss and a win against Chantel Cameron, about to have a 3rd fight with Amanda Serrano. At 38 years of age, there's no who's Katie Taylor going to fight if she doesn't fight Caroline Dubois. And I don't think Caroline and Ben understand that. It's like I was watching a video and Elgis Klimas was answering media whether Lomachenko can retire without Tank Davis. And Klimas had to repeat, Lomachenko doesn't need the Tank fight. Lomachenko, his legacy is set. And I agree. Why would Lomachenko need a Tank fight when Tank acted for years like he didn't need a Lomachenko fight? Tank should have took the windows that were open earlier in his career. He shouldn't have waited until Loma, similar age to Katie Taylor, 37, Katie's 38. Loma said he wanted to spend time with his family and he's not motivated. You want to call it a duck? Go ahead. And this is the thing, liability always goes to the person who ducks first. Because when you duck like that, you don't just stall that particular fight happening. You actually hold up a lot of other good fights happening in that weight class. You got to set the ball rolling and strike when the iron's hot. That's when boxing works best. That fight should have happened a long time ago. And Klimas says he doesn't need Tank. Not for money, not for legacy. As far as Lomachenko's concerned, that ship sailed. Klimas said, yes, that's the best fight in the lightweight division, Tank versus Loma. Unfortunately for Tank, there's a lot of media who are going to take Lomachenko's side. And boxing these days is as much a clout war, propaganda war, nearly as much as a pugilistic war. Now, the Shakur Stevenson fight, that's a horrible duck. As far as I'm concerned, that's a stain on Loma's record. Because he ducked Shakur when he wasn't having motivation issues. He took other fights, didn't he? Who hasn't ducked Shakur at 135 from ZEPEDA, Tank to Lomachenko? And you see, the thing is, Al Heyman, Team Tank, they think they're clever, but something's been lost in their little machine without Mayweather. Something's lost. Everybody saw it coming when they finally wanted to fight Lomachenko. And Klimas, Loma, they weren't going for the okie-doke, man. I think that set the wheels in motion for Tank's indifferent performance against Lamont Roach. Tank not used to opponents saying, nah, I don't need the fight. Then you get unheralded Lamont Roach. Got nothing to lose. Tank talking about retiring during the build-up. Fight date gets pushed back. There seems to be turmoil with Calvin Ford. Tank talks about he needs therapy. Look, even if he was fighting Lomachenko, he would have had a lot of these issues anyway. But motivation is an important part of boxing. So even with all them outside issues, if you've got a big fight like Lomachenko, that could be a welcome distraction. Everybody was expecting him to blow Lamont Roach out there in a couple of rounds, and Lamont wasn't having it. And with the fight date getting pushed back, I said in my breakdown that, he's getting longer to acclimate to 135. He's getting longer to study Tank Davis. Added to that, they're familiar with each other, both from Maryland, fought in the amateurs a couple of times. And it was like Lamont Roach's dad/trainer strategically, physically got his son where he needed to be. Now Tank's talking about fighting Jake Paul. What is going on with Tank's career? So it looks like they're not going to go into an immediate rematch with Lamont Roach. Will Roach go back down to 130 and defend his belt? I wouldn't have thought so. He's a 135 pounder. He don't go back down to super featherweight. I mean, even if he doesn't get an immediate rematch with Tank, him and Shakur have already had a non-binding agreement that they'll fight each other. All the money is at 135 and beyond for Lamont Roach. So no, Loma don't need Tank, not for legacy nor money. And Caroline Dubois, Katie Taylor does not need you, not for legacy nor money.
Obviously, as a world champion, everything is going to get harder. The competition is going to become tougher. The fights are suddenly going to edge away from being, 60-40 to 50-50 fights. I'll be involved in some big fights in my next few fights, hopefully. I want to challenge Terry Harper next and then go for undisputed against Beatrice Ferreira, the Olympic silver medalist.
And what happens if the phone rings and somebody maybe from America says, actually, we've got a Katie Taylor fight for you?
Oh, of course I'll be picking that one up. I'll be signing that straight away. But to be honest, I don't think she'll fight me.
And I agree. She's probably not going to fight Caroline Dubois. But it's the way Caroline's saying it. To me, it sounds like she's saying that Katie Taylor is scared of her, when Katie Taylor is not thinking about her. Does Caroline know how much money the Taylor and Serrano franchise, let's call it, generates, its impact on history. Not women's boxing, on sporting history. It's the biggest trilogy or fight series in women's boxing history. There's not one trilogy or series of fights between two women as big as that. Netflix, Madison Square Garden, first two fights, certified classics. She's not thinking about Caroline Dubois. Caroline had a hard time against the South Korean in her last fight, but the facts are a majority decision win, was hurt in the last round. It's not the form where you start calling out Katie Taylor. It just isn't. Like, Caroline has no name brand wins on her resume. She just doesn't have them. Matchroom, in terms of the fights that Caroline needs, Steffi Bull and Eddie Hearn, they're not just going to let Caroline Dubois feast on Terry Harper, beat her up, having to sell fish and chips. I say that because when she lost to Alicia Baumgarten, she said she might have to go sell fish and chips and retire. No, they're not going to do that. It's not one of them situations where Turkey is going to intervene. They're not investing into women's boxing like that, especially after Sky Nicholson's display against Raven Chapman. So Ben and Caroline will not so much Caroline. This is Ben, boxer and a Sky decision right now, right? They're either going to have to pay up a whole lot of money to get Terry Harper in the ring and get her to cross over from Matchroom to boxer on the Sky platform. But I don't think they're prepared to pay the type of money it would take to get her over there. And Ben, I've got a feeling he's not going to want to have it look like Eddie's getting one over on him and send Caroline over to DAZN to make the fight, which is silly, really.
If a man wants to make him tear down on it.
The Ferreira fight, they could have had that at the Royal Albert Hall on the undercard of Price versus Jonas. They could have had that there, but they opted for the South Korean girl. Because let's face it, if Matchroom send Terry Harper over to Sky, over to Boxer, to get beaten up by Caroline Dubois, they're going to beat up on Terry Harper, parade the two belts around, and then when it comes time to make the Beatrice Ferreira fight, oh, we're the A side, and oh, we want this and we want that. They see you coming a mile off. Just like Lomachenko saw Tank coming a mile off. They could have had that unification on Sky. Eddie said, we'll let Beatrice go over there. Not a problem. Got to pay to play. You know what I mean? They're not just going to give up Terry Harper, give you two belts and give you all the leverage. They're not going to do that. The truth is, Caroline and Ben Shalom don't have the confidence to fight Beatrice. Why would Matchroom send their weakest player out there? If you want to build your fighter from off the Matchroom roster at 135, then you're going to have to go for the Brazilian girl. And it's a two-way thing. Eddie needs to build up Beatrice just as much as Caroline needs Terry Harper. If Eddie can get Beatrice to turn over Caroline in the UK, he could feature Beatrice on UK cards, although she's been on some already, but she'd be more recognisable to the media and to the fans. And then they can start building her in Brazil and globally. Only thing though is Matchroom have the leverage. They have 3 women with lightweight straps. Katie Taylor, Terry Harper, Beatrice Ferreira. So they can play a little more of a strategic game with who fights Caroline, where the fight takes place, etc. Ben is going to have to take a chance. Caroline's going to have to take a chance.
Cause I'm too hot to handle, not licking this out like Livingstone Bramble.
It was this period I got hooked to boxing, 1983, 1984. Hooked. Still had 15 rounders in the UK, World of Sport on Saturday, delayed recording. And what they used to do, they didn't play the whole broadcast. We didn't used to get the whole broadcast. So they played Mancini Bramble Saturday, and then a week after, we got Johnny Bumpus versus Gene Hatcher for the WBA 140-pound title. That was also on the card. So they'd break it up and put them on 2 separate broadcasts. Lou Duva was just as visible as Don King and Bob Arum, even more so. Bramble challenged Ray Mancini for that WBC title. Bramble had an exceptional reach for a lightweight. Al Bernstein, watching it back, he was saying that the corner were telling Mancini to go to the body, but Bramble was catching a lot of the shots on his elbows with them exceptionally long arms, and he used that high guard to punch in between Mancini's powerful but wide punches, and Mancini fought in one gear. Bramble was a switch hitter. There was nothing fancy about what he did. He covered up, and Mancini's relatively weak defense, he used to get cut often in fights against the likes of Arguello, Haugen, Bramble. you'd see how crude he actually was. And like when he was getting caught against Bramble, he wasn't riding none of the shots. They were clean shots that would snap his neck back. But Mancini was short, squat, and he had this muscular upper body. So he could take punishment. But Marty Denkin, who Lou Duva didn't want to referee the contest, had to stop it in the 14th. Toe-to-toe, all-out action. Bramble from St. Kitts and Nevis was an eccentric Rastafarian. And he used to carry snakes around his neck. And apparently he had a voodoo doll before he fought Mancini and poked it in the eyes and said, "Tell me how you feel now. You see how your eyes are jumping." After defeating Mancini for the WBA Lightweight Championship, he had a 10-rounder against Edwin Curet, which wasn't uncommon back in the day to have non-title fights. Then he defended against Tyrone Crawley and impressed in doing so. And then there was the massive upset against Edwin Rosario and got stopped in 2. He got hit by a right hand. He was on the floor blinking, perhaps indicating that he got thumbed, and the title was gone. He transitioned into a fringe contender, gatekeeper, but had some great scraps. So many of the names are gone, like Johnny Bumpers, who was on the undercard of Mancini Bramble, he passed away. Edwin Rosario, who took Bramble's title, he's gone. Roger Mayweather, who Bramble fought, Mayweather stopped him, looked very impressive, did Roger. He's passed on. So many of them are passed on. So it seems like a lot of people in the boxing industry are passing away this week, and Colin Hart, a journalist, was one of them. Now, I considered how I was going to approach this. Like, if I said nothing at all, people would be saying, well, how come you haven't addressed Colin Hart's passing away? And the truth is, I don't have positive memories of Colin Hart. From the 90s, I have none. And I'm sure they're out there. The last time I spoke about Colin Hart was about 4 or 5 months ago, after listening to an October Red video where October was speaking to Steve Bunce. And Steve Bunce sold Colin Hart out without saying his name, but me being from that generation, not as old as Colin, I put 2 and 2 together and his name came up and I responded in kind.
You know, the British press and the media really disliked Nassim Hamed, and he just kept winning, and they'd say, this guy's a bum, this guy's too old, this guy's this guy's that. 20,000, 18,000 in venues. He does not an attraction. When he get beat by Marco Antonio Barrera in Las Vegas after the most horrendous camp in history, members of the British press, newspaper press, this is at that time, were giving each other high fives. 65-year-old men were high-fiving each other in celebration that little Naz had lost, and literally saying, I told you he couldn't fight. It was about his 34th fight. He was unbeaten. Go figure.
Now, let me just fill in the blank. Some of you will know this, but some won't. So, Steve Bunce obviously didn't want to say Colin Hart's name, but that's who he was talking about. Colin Hart would have been around 65, around 2001, when a 27-year-old Prince Nassim Hamed, 35-0 with 31 knockouts, lost a unanimous decision to Hall of Famer, not just the regular fighter, Marco Antonio Barrera in Las Vegas. And the press from that said, I told you he couldn't fight. And that's Colin Hart. Bunsey didn't want to say his name, but I'll put it out there. Colin Hart and other members of the British press were celebrating in Las Vegas. Now, Nassim was like Marmite. You either took to his brash, arrogant, showboating, trash talking, or you didn't. But one thing he could do, he could fight. Imagine that, a British journalist assigned by the newspaper to cover this British world champion fighting in Las Vegas, and he loses on points. Was thoroughly beaten, but he never gave up. Loses on points, and then you're celebrating. Told you he wasn't a good fighter, throwing up high fives with other members of the British press. And he's still out there covering boxing. Colin Hart, scumbag of the day. And he and Nassim had history before the Barrera fight. I'll leave you with this little jewel. This was at a media event for the Wayne McCullough fight.
You are one of the worst journalists I've ever come across. You want to know why, Colin? Just don't speak. Let me just carry on. You know what your opinion means? You know what your opinion means? Your opinion.
It's obviously got to you.
Whoa.
It's obviously
Whoa,
got to
because
you.
you're writing about me. If I wrote about you, Colin, I don't think you'd like it.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking to you from my heart. I don't like you. I don't like you, Colin.
Well,
you're a fool.
Sandy Round takes on MIKAELA Mayo in Las Vegas in a rematch from last year. where they had a unification for the welterweight titles. MIKAELA won a tight decision, but not before Sandy Ryan was leaving a hotel to make her way to the MSG to fight. She had paint thrown all over her. There was an investigation, which doesn't seem like it's came to much. Hopefully, Sandy steps up the security and she brings them belts back to the UK. The fight takes place in Las Vegas this Saturday. Earlier on DAZN, Olympian and touted amateur Pat Brown, cruiserweight, makes his debut for MATCHROOM. He takes on Frederico Crandon, Argentinian, 33 years of age, 7 wins, 3 inside the distance, 4 losses, 2 draws. Eddie Hearn has been giving Pat Brown the big build-up. So let's see if he can live up to the hype and the power-punching reputation and be this potential star, big-ticket seller.
400 people in here. You know, the journey begins for Pat Brown. And when people keep asking me, who is the next star of British boxing? Who should we look out for? Now I can tell them, Pat Brown. I mean, we've got so much young talent, but this is a guy, I think, you know, with his Olympic pedigree, with his amateur pedigree, with the support of his city, massive, massive ticket seller, knockout artist, loads of fun. It's going to be a great journey.
CAMRON VOUNG, 7-0, takes on Jordan Flynn, 11-0, 1 draw, for the WBO European Lightweight title. This fight was supposed to be a goer from last year. It got cancelled on one occasion at least, for whatever reason. But Saturday, it's on the undercard of Pat Brown's debut for the WBO European Lightweight title. Seems like there's a lot of bad blood between the two lads. Should be a good scrap. CAMRON VOUNG will be the favourite to take it, although Jordan Flynn really fancies his chances. You don't think Shakur beats ZEPEDA? I think Shakur will win that, man. I think Shakur wins that. What does ZEPEDA really do? Throws a lot of punches. The footwork is just going to give him all type of issues, man. And the hand speed is going to give him all types of issues. Going to be throwing a lot, but what's going to be landing? All the punches he's throwing. Like a lot of them ain't landing, right? When he fights someone with a nice stiff counter punch, I can't throw so much punches. And then when the output reduces, what is he like as a thinking boxer? I don't know. He throws a lot of nothing punches, trying to overwhelm Devin with volume. Devin slipping a lot of them shots. Slipping a lot of them. He just ain't got no power to return fire. He's just looking to overwhelm him. There's no real technique to it. Okay, he's landing that lead hand now. That lead hand is landing. He's looking to overwhelm and drown Devin. Oh, good right hand from Devin. No power in it though, but he landed flush. He's never been a big puncher. And he landed a left hand flush. Good shots from Devin. Devin landed some good shots. Well, Tevin, should I say? Tevin landed some good shots. He's right there. He's right there to be caught. He's right there. Some good counters by Tevin, but, you know, the work rate. Oh, look, Devin pieced him up with them left hands, man. Getting pieced. Fulfill your freedom, says Keyshawn Shakur Tank, and then we'll end this ZEPEDA guy pretty quickly, I believe. He also says both your hands down is a problem. He is easy to catch. He is easy to catch. His boxing is very basic. It's very basic boxing. Very rudimentary. If Shakur can't beat that guy, I don't know what to say to you. I won't be impressed for one. I won't be impressed. More pressure from ZEPEDA. I knew he'd be getting a bit of a boxing lesson in this fight. Oh, look at the shots he's taking. Look. Tevin just using that and then pull counters on him and slapping him up. He just throws a lot of punches. He's just physical. There's nothing there that separates him from anybody, really. Just look, he's just throwing punches. Just throwing a lot. Just throwing a lot. Just throwing a lot. That's all he's doing. He's just throwing a lot. There's no jab. No jab at all. He's got zero jab. Zero jab. Tevin, just look. Down he goes. Too open, bruh. Too open. So another rematch on Saturday. Tevin Farmer runs it back with William ZEPEDA. They fought November 2024 when ZEPEDA won a split decision, which no one was expecting. ZEPEDA was supposed to soundly beat Tevin Farmer, which he wasn't able to. Left hand counter put ZEPEDA on the canvas. Technically, he got a boxing lesson, but he threw too many punches. That ultimately got him the decision. Tevin complained there was no testing for PEDs pre or post fight. The media went silent and just seemed to ignore what Tevin was saying. Tevin himself stopped talking about it, and then he got a rematch. I don't think this fight will be any different, although ZEPEDA has had a full camp on how to deal with that southpaw stance. He's going to struggle, just like he did first fight, and he'll throw too many punches and eke out a controversial decision perhaps. And even his work rate and the unmatchable amount of punches he throws. You tie that in with no testing pre-fight, post-fight, it leads to a lot of suspicion in my eyes.
Boxing beats and rhymes.
No one can do it better.
Let me tell you